qualified candidates in the pipeline in the recent months. So I'm wondering if it makes sense to ask everybody a favor when you see a candidate with some kind of performance memory tune-up experience in the resume, give the memory hiring manager Craig a heads up. Maybe I hope it makes sense and it's fair for memory team to visit that resume or profile first in the pooling job, so we get the first opportunity to see if that could be a good fit for the memory performance engineer role. It's basically in the pool. We are actively looking at the pool, but sometimes the candidates will be grabbed by other folks first.
Yeah, that's a reasonable request. The other thing we did was Craig asked if we could up it in the priority list. So I'm going to take that to there's a PM and engineering or PM and development meeting on Thursday. It's usually either Wednesday or Thursday of most weeks. So if folks have, if they have requests for change in priority, let me know, because then we can add it and potentially discuss it there. To potentially get it pushed up, but that's what I'm going to advocate for in that discussion. And Craig did a good job in that issue of kind of writing up associated with that. And then the other thing was I talked to Steve about it yesterday, Chun, and if you want to reach out to him, he could potentially have the recruiters do a separate sourcing effort, kind of focused on that specific. So if folks feel like that's going to help them, particularly to land a particular need, then that aspect.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll reach out to Steve.
Okay. And then Tim, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think it would be also good to simply bring it up in the bi-weekly backend hiring meeting, so that all the recruiters know if we are seeing someone with specific performance, memory, something around that knowledge, that we rather pipe them first to the memory team. And so far, I'm very happy for the prioritization. So, yeah. Finding people who have performance knowledge on that scale, it's a tough one.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Are you going to bring it up at the bi-weekly back-end meeting, Chun?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. All right. Give me 1 second here. For some reason, it's giving me the suggested action item, but it's not allowing me to actually edit it to give it to Chun as opposed to Tim. Cool. Next one I have just a little bit of a cleanup. So I've got an issue open. If you have any feedback for me, let me know. Liam had a couple of things in there associated with the Chun. I think you had a few comments as well. Essentially what I've been noticing is our scorecards don't always have thumbs up. So I've been pushing managers on basically making sure they have coverage across all the areas. It's kind of implicit. It's implicitly stated, that we should cover all these areas, but it's important for us to kind of recognize it. And scorecards are the easiest way for me to figure this out. So what I'm doing is I'm politely pushing back, asking them to basically pull in the justification, but I also want to update the hiring processes kind of to reflect that. Questions or feedback on that? And again, this is only in the must-haves area, so it's just making sure we covered all the must-haves.
Yeah, I kind of like the concept of breaking it up, trying to get everybody, between all the interviewers for covering the must-haves. I find myself running out of time quickly in 45 minutes to cover everything. So I think maybe if each person takes a couple, 3 in the must-haves category and work it out as far as being able to look at the scorecard and see which areas were covered, and then pick up the areas that were not, and so we can get that full coverage.
Yeah, if you want to make a suggestion in the MR of how we do that, it feels like we should be doing that within Greenhouse some way so that they're coming into the discussion so they're kind of aware of it. I'm not sure the best way to work it in, but like I like the idea. It's the equivalent of basically we used to have previous companies that we had pre-brief calls where we basically say, you cover this area, you cover this area. And
yeah, exactly. And I've been trying to capture those notes in my in the key takeaways area as well. So these are what I covered. This is what I didn't cover.
Okay, cool. All right, Chen, you have the next one.
Yes. So I'm going to open up the front-end engineer for ecosystem job, but right now I don't have any front-end engineer manager on my team, so I need someone to help me, just like what Dennis did for the fulfillment of front-end engineer hiring. I need someone, at least one front-end engineer manager help me to do the technical assessment and hosting the. I can schedule the interviews, but need someone to do the technical assessment. I pinged Dennis, but he is overwhelmed by the fulfillment and all the job he has right now. So literally, I'm asking for help. Who can help? Or it doesn't have to be one dedicated person, but it could, it could float among several people. But they need to be aware that I need their help.
I would suggest, exactly what Dalia wrote. Bring it up in tomorrow's front-end hiring meeting. Is it tomorrow?
Okay.
My calendar is so full I can't read the appointments anymore. Yeah, it's the front-end bi-weekly catch-up is tomorrow. So I would suggest bringing it up there and then do simply a round robin on the recruiting scheduler side. They should be aware of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I will do that.
But we don't need anything specific for those front-end candidates or so, like knowledge around building plugins, integrations, stuff like that.
Yeah, I will elaborate the details there, but I don't think this is very different from other front-end engineers.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, and that's Thursday morning, right?
Tomorrow morning, I think. Yeah, tomorrow morning, front end bi-weekly catch up.
Really?
Yeah.
The 11th.
The 10th, Wednesday.
It's at the same time as group conversation.
Yeah.
Whatever time that is for you.
Okay, I must have an old invite. Can someone forward me the new invite?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Is that something I should be on as well?
Yeah, you should be.
If so, I don't have it in my calendar.
This is basically a meeting where all the front-end engineering managers get together with the recruiters to simply see how the pooling prioritization goes. So yeah, I'm attending only if I need something specific around front-end engineering. So, but if you have front-end engineering managers already around, they should be able to relay. But definitely, if you are already doing invitations, can you also invite? Awesome.
So Todd, I added you, and Christopher, you too.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, and also the backend sync up. I'm adding both of you.
Okay, cool. Bartek had a basically added an item as well. We have Ash who's moving back to Geo in August. Really appreciate his help there. He has two new folks on the growth team. They both started early, just in the past few weeks. He's looking to see if there's anybody available to potentially come in from that perspective. And we may not be able to help him there, but just you want to make sure that folks had that in there. And Tim, you have the similar kind of phenomenon, which is a senior experience within the team seating.
Yeah, so my bigger teams plan, create, and manage are all thin at the moment. Either we are getting now people back, especially for memory, but we have still some people out, and Create Plan Manager have so many topics currently on their plate. But for the Verify and Release team, there it's quite the same. They are super new all on the team. So I'm currently looking into not move someone over, but rather have someone who is like their information know-how point. So if they are creating a new feature, they can ask them, they can run it through with them, so that it's not like a 100% time investment, but perhaps rather a 30 to 40% time investment. But even there, I don't have a candidate yet, so still looking for that.
Do you think this is affecting our missed deliverables? Because products commenting that our missed deliverables seem to be up right now. And I know, like in the case I think of Verify, they were that was kind of the feedback that, or no, I think it was Release actually. Darby was giving me the feedback of that, essentially, where he was basically saying that aspect that everybody's new.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm looking for someone, because they have simply the problem that they run into rabbit holes way deep down, things that they assume look much easier than they look, are much harder, and especially Verify and Release have a lot of binary features, I call them, which means that either this feature works or it doesn't. There is not much room in between. So it's if you're talking about HTTPS for pages, yeah, it either works or it doesn't. But there is nothing in between that you can say, okay, I ship only half of it, that half of the pages get HTTPS. So that's one of the biggest problems there, and that's why I'm looking for inducing more know-how around the code base to fill in more the gaps of previous very senior engineers. So.
Yeah, so I guess the question would be is do we want to be more aggressive here, where we kind of ask some folks specifically around this, even if they're on an embedded team where they have that experience? What are folks' thoughts relative to that?
I'm currently trying to be carnivoring only my own teams by simply asking next week in my dev staff meeting to help out Verify Release, and let's see if someone comes up with a candidate. If not, then we definitely need to be more aggressive to support that team. But especially with last week's Redis topic, I'm more hesitant because, of course, if you have the teams which are doing the most used features and they come into such a Redis thing, then of course you need them on the table, and you need to have as many hands on the deck as you can. And simply moving then someone else to help on a complete new area is great, but of course is hurting a little bit then in such emergency situations. So yeah, I will see what the rest of the staff thinks about it, if they have some candidates in the pipeline. And as we are getting people back from the global optimizations, so we should have a little bit more room there again. And also Manage has ramped up. We have more than doubled the team size now in the last 2 months. So that's also something good, that we should have more relief also from our teams. I will keep you posted. Okay.
Can we everybody do that? Like, I think that feels like a one that not just Tim should be asking that question. So, like, hey, ask at your next staff, ask managers, is there anybody who's been here for, let's say over 6 months who we feel like is doing well and can help out, potentially jump into a team from that perspective? Is that a reasonable request from everybody? Okay.
If you find someone, I will send cookies.
All right, so please, everybody do that, and then let's all talk about it next week, see if we can help that in any way. Okay, and then next one I got is basically there's been a number of infrastructure issues. Thank you to Tim, who's been driving a lot of this from a Redis perspective. His team has been kind of starting to do some analysis and also basically cutting down on it. I'm encouraging everybody to read the document that's kind of the exec summary of it, because it's super important, because obviously affected customer revenue associated with it. Other things that I kind of want to call out specifically is we have a discussion going on around getting product to think more in these terms than us just being reactive to it. So like as an example, there are at least 2 limits. We don't have a limit on mirroring. We don't have a limit on JUnit tests that they can actually run. And it feels like from a caustic scaling perspective, we need to be able to articulate that in some fashion and, you know, basically manage it in some fashion, particularly at the .com level around that. So I'm trying to work with Scott on that aspect. Another aspect is basically Redis being kind of overburdened. It sounds like we've made really good progress in regards to it's half the size it was a week ago. So it sounds like we've made some good progress there. So thanks, Tim and team, for those aspects. And then the last part is Jerry recognized that we're having challenges sometimes raising folks from a perspective around of issues that come up related to our operational aspects. So he's basically created a DEF CON board where we're going to effectively triage it associated with that. I have a proposal up around that, kind of discussing it, but I would encourage everybody to read it and give feedback, because like one thing we need to decide is like who's actually managing that board and checking it. And, you know, like what I'd love to see is every business day we're checking it, making sure if there's any new issues that they're getting assigned to the right group. And this is across the organization, right? This is not just like your specific team. So it's 1, figuring out the mapping, 2, making sure that it's prioritized appropriately within that group. As an example, P1, S1s, we want to be, assigned immediately and being worked immediately would be kind of my view. Making sure that product's informed and kind of managing it from that perspective. We started with Sean McGovern doing it, but I'm not sure whether we should do directors or managers. So please comment on that issue, kind of like how you would think about that from a rotation perspective. And I kept it somewhat generic at this point because I didn't want to go too far on that perspective. So Tim, you had some additional comments?
Yeah, so the main thoughts and learnings that we looked into so far is really that, first of all, looking into training the engineers or making them simply more aware about safe failover. So if there is, like, there was one case, it definitely had some impact, not the main impact, but if there is like one a whole JUnit XML file was put in a value which was 90 megabytes, and it is basically locking up the whole thing because it's doing the write, and then the rest of the fleet goes, okay, I'm waiting for that, which means that we need to be more aware that we have hard limits around that. Caching is hard, but we need to find ways that also on a global level that our caching, perhaps we need our own library set or utility set that we can cover caching also on a bigger scale, so that we say, okay, any values above that are not cached, or something that is currently also discussed. I think that can bring a lot is looking at the different results is client-aware caching. So this means like that the client who is going to Redis actually knows if one value was called on multiple times. So we have found things where specific parts of the same view that is currently rendered is basically calling the same value from Redis like 3 or 4 times, and is always going to Redis rather than looking into its own client and its own storage. So perhaps we need to adjust there and simply make people more aware about edge cases, and also simply the sense of abuse. There is abuse going on, and that one of the main things that was impacting GitLab was the abuse with the whole topic around people who were trying to use owned logins with own passwords, and that was basically putting a huge hit on it. But if we are more aware, if we are building features like login, user authentication, stuff like that, that our system is more safe against such impacts, then we also shouldn't have something like, okay, there is one person who is funny and is going on a rampage with tons of different proxies and brings us basically to the knees. And I think we need to get more mature in that area. The other big point to help actually engineers to execute, that is something that I talked with already with Meg last week, he's currently working with his team against Italy, where we have really this specific NFS setup, but also broadening that up so that we have something like a self-service shelf where engineers can go and say, hey, I'm trying to test something for sessions and I'm changing something on sessions. So I have like a loader script or something like a Gorilla script that is going against a specific instance and is basically hammering that against sessions to figure out, are we failing somewhere? So this is less about CI, but rather on a use by use cases, and that we figure out along the way, how can we basically make our engineers simply say, okay, I'm working on something. They go to our big room with the different setups and choose one and try stuff out if they are working on something new. And perhaps those are some things that can help on the long run and make us more stable on that part.
Okay. Is there an issue around the discussion with Mac?
Yes, there is one. Let me find it.
Okay.
So please proceed. I will search.
Yeah. One thing. Do you think Chaos Monkey would help here at all? Like basically, trying to simulate failure cases or resource abuse from that perspective. Okay, because that's the other thing that I put as a suggestion in one of the MRs, but we'd have to get some resourcing focus there if we're going to see that happen. So, okay, cool. All right, yeah, please look through that, and if, like I said, if you have comments, please let us know from that perspective. And then, Chun, you want to remind us?
It's just a reminder that the QC OKR development is coming soon.
Yeah, and then part of that will be is Q2 scoring for early August. So just keep that in mind as we kind of start moving into that aspect of it. So cool. Other things to discuss? I feel like we got a lot discussed, and we still have a little bit of time.
I was just curious about the previous conversation we were just having around the safe failovers and abuse awareness, and I was just wondering, do we have any sort of processes around software hardening and things of that nature where we're actually taking on these types of security aspects? Or like I said, not even necessarily just security, but what I would call software hardening itself. So making sure that, checking input validation and things of this nature.
No, we don't do it as much as we should. I mean, I think we should not only do the software hardening, but, basically stress test all sorts of different parts of it. You almost imagine having a red team for GitLab, right? Here's a team that's trying to break GitLab, and there's a team that's trying to figure out how do we prevent that or make it more robust so that it doesn't happen. So I do think that we need to do that. We don't do a whole lot of it.
Okay, thanks.
One aspect that we have been focused on has been less around the breaking and more around the representation of like a 10K user, which Mech was supposed to be delivering that, I think, this quarter, but I haven't checked in on status of it to see if he's got those test setups. That's kind of related to what Tim was saying about being able to basically check out a setup to basically do that. That's the closest thing we have to hardening.
Okay, so some stress testing, basically.
Yeah.
So stress testing common things that like a 10,000 on-premise system would be doing, right? GitLab.com is kind of weird in that we have a lot of public stuff that nobody usually else faces. Like, you're not going to have credential stuffing on a self-managed host that's in a company firewall, right? So it's valuable to us, but not necessarily to others.
Cool. Other questions or issues to discuss? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great